At FitFiliate, we're excited to announce the Affiliate Engineering Seminar. Coming soon to an affiliate near you, don't miss this exciting opportunity to create the affiliate of your dreams. Link in show notes or in bio to register. Welcome to the FitFiliate podcast. And welcome back to the next episode of the FitFiliate podcast, joined by my ever entertaining and faithful cohort, Tony. And today, excited to welcome back Drew Zaro to the podcast, all things wealth, financial freedom, all the good things about money that sometimes might scare you. So welcome.
Hi,
gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
The most handsome financial advisor in all the land. Look at him. He'll even show up with no pants on. Oh wait, that's
I'm not aiming this camera down any further.
That's why we never see Tony from chest up.
Tony's actually wearing women's Lululemon yoga pants right now.
They're more comfortable on the bike ahead.
My jeans do get very tight. They feel very slimming.
I thought you always wore tight jeans anyway, Tony, which is another problem altogether, but sometimes. So while we have the gift of Drew today, and probably one of the most well-traveled and best at, I guess, expressing one of our freedoms of, freedom of time, freedom of purpose, freedom of money, and getting out there and making the most of your life. I think if anyone follows Drew, you'll see his adventures, and that's very high on your priority list.
Yeah.
For you and your wife and what you want to get out and explore in the world. And I know that our coaches and affiliate owners are constantly stressed with, the economy is bad. Clients can't afford my services. I can't raise prices. I can't afford this. I can't afford that. And I know that when you start working with clients, you have to peel away some of those barriers that they have to changing that scarcity mindset and rerouting their thinking, for want of a better term. So I thought this was a good one to get into today. It's still quite relevant out there in the marketplace that people are worried about. The future, the economy, the money. Is there enough? There's not enough. A good thing to dig into with you today.
Yeah.
It's never enough.
Never enough. So let's deal with some facts first.
Yeah.
Or facts as much as we can know them, I guess.
Oh boy.
So we're going to start about Tony. No, joking. What's your perception at the moment of where, economy wise and things like that are kind of heading, for the general population?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly it almost always feels like the times that we're in now, whatever the current time is, it always feels like it's uncomfortable, and you want to get to the next stage, and it might be related to the economy, so something bigger that's almost something you can't affect, or it might even be related to your current job situation, your employment situation, might be related to a personal situation, debt that's incurred for whatever reason. But I think I try to remind myself regularly and remind my clients regularly that the future is there's a lot more hope than I think that the news outlets will let you be aware of. It's how many times have we talked about, at least here in the United States for sure, is the government going to shut down, or they have enough funding to continue through the next fiscal year, and it always gets resolved because it has to get resolved. And I think it's very easy to let those distracting elements of life be something that kind of pull you away from the things that you can affect and control. So even just the question about where's the economy headed, I'm pretty keen on the positive trajectory long term of what life looks like for the most part. And here in the United States, things are expensive right now. Data will tell you that inflation is dropping, but my grocery bill doesn't really make me feel that way. I think someone's lying to me. But truly, the position that anyone's in that current moment has a huge play in how things feel currently. And I know for me and a lot of anecdotal experience that I've had in conversations with clients and friends and family is life's never felt more expensive. It factually might be the most expensive that life actually is. Housing is expensive, food's expensive. And I think that it's easy, like I said, to use those things to distract from the potential that's out there to make money. Never has there been a time in history where anybody has more access to aggregating more wealth than today. I'd argue probably not, just because of the plethora of resources, free resources you have to just make money. It might be a CrossFit gym, it might be cryptocurrency. Both of those can be very volatile and speculative endeavors, but there's also tons of other careers that you can just undertake by consuming information and building your kind of aim and focus in that way. So yeah, I think the bigger picture is that things will be just fine, despite how it feels right now. And they'll be just fine because there's a lot more that you can control, I think, than we'll let ourselves believe.
Yeah, the psychology of that plays a huge role. And I mean, Drew and I have lots of text conversations back and forth about a lot of the doom and gloom stuff, because it's a huge piece of the conversation. Most of our conversations are centered around real estate for the large part, but like fear is much better marketing than positivity, unfortunately. And that's just the nature of the beast. But like from an actual actionable sort of, tactical standpoint, the only time in history that will be better to make money than today will be tomorrow. And the reason for that is that despite how we all hold beliefs about money in terms of its scarcity and we must covet it, defend it, protect it, conserve it, preserve it, insert whatever superlative and adjective you want. The truth is, if you just step back and pay attention, more money is created every single day than yesterday. And so money in and of itself is not alone scarce, right? But how we interact with that and pursue it and process it, that creates an interesting conversation, because to the whole point of this is that the reason why, everybody likes to sell us doom and glooms and recession and crash and this and that and whatnot is that people pay attention, right? Everybody's worried that they're going to lose their money, not paying attention to the fact that, just a couple of years ago, the Govy decided to pump $5 trillion into the economy. It's like, oh, no, nothing happened here, right? There's nothing to look at. And I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but if you can just dump $5 trillion into the market because, there's a bug running around, right? There is no shortage of money, and the market will do what markets do and things of that nature. But to Drew's point, it only ever goes up, right? On the long-term time horizon. What's nice about Drew's perspective and what's refreshing in the industry is, and what I want to talk about a lot in this is that, we unfortunately work in an impoverished industry. Just call a spade, right? The collective mindset of the average person inside this ecosystem, for whatever reason, has very much a scarcity mindset. They don't think in terms of wealth and potential and really riches, right? Instead they think of service and scarcity and expenses and defense, right? And so there's a lot of reasons for that, I think, but one of the big reasons I believe to be the most problematic is there's not a lot of beacons of financial success inside the ecosystem, right? In fact, there's just about 100 to 1 of people who are doing the opposite, and meaning they're giving their time or wasting their time. And so what's nice about Drew is that, one, he speaks their language very well, because he's obviously a coach just like the rest of them. He works in the industry, and he looks great without his shirt on. Shameless plug there. Love it. So I had
check
to
out my OnlyFans.
Yes, I was getting thirsty, right? But he speaks their language incredibly well. But the thing that one of those things that he speaks very well to is, and he speaks to it a lot, is that over a long enough time horizon, everybody wins. And fitness is the exact same thing. You're not going to go to the gym and be like, you know what, I'm gonna do CrossFit this week, and just reap the rewards and pay the dividends based on that intensity that you would invest over the course of 5 days. We know that in fitness, right? What do? Right? It's just compounding interest every single day. Make the investment, make the effort, and walk out of the gym being I said this to myself yesterday. I was like, why isn't that enough? What I just suffered from and what I've just gone through was just way harder than what 99.9% of the rest of the population is going to go through. why can't that just be enough for the day? Why do I now also got to go to meetings, got to go take calls, got to make emails? Like, can't that just be enough? I'm way better than everybody else in that regard, because it's not, right? It's the same thing. But like Drew is very good at speaking to that. And I think through the avenue, which is Wealth Coached, is nice because it brings those two worlds together. And so I know we're not really talking about Wealth Coach yet. We're just talking about like Drew's view of the market. But like, I know him personally well enough to know that like he views it the same way he views fitness. It's just long enough time horizon, it goes up. But just like fitness, everybody wants to tell you why like, oh, the world is dying of all these comorbidities and all these other things. But there's a place where that's not happening, and that's inside CrossFit gyms. And there's a place where like you're not going broke, and that's in a place where people are making the same sort of intentional actions, you know, in their daily actions with finance, and they're getting the same results out of their finance, their fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's understanding that long game, isn't it? That it's not, you know, like you said, like the pain of a workout's going to hurt today, but that's going to fade, that discomfort, and you're going to go on to, you know, next week be able to do a little bit more. But then when you look back 3-5 years, all that time you've invested in your nutrition, your training, you go, oh yeah, I'm a different human being.
Yeah, I think the most helpful part of it is once you've proven that to yourself, you now have this refreshed mindset that is like, we'll use fitness in this case. If you go through a period, maybe a career transition where you're like, hey, listen, I talking to yourself, I only have 3 days a week to work out. I know that's not enough. I know that's not even checking the box. But if the career transition is the priority, because it means that's where your focus needs to be, or maybe it's you have a sick child that they get your priority, you get no fitness in. You've built like this understanding for the framework that gets you back in shape in, you know, a set amount of time, but you have the skill set. So while you may go through a period of this isn't optimal, you have this built-in toolkit where you're like, I'm good. I got that over there. So when I get back to it, I'm going to start squatting once a week. I'm going to get through an endurance piece once a week. I'm going to get CrossFit in my schedule. And so the same thing I think happens with money is if you've never taken the time to measure and to improve and to put yourself on a good path, you're never going to have the ability to weather those volatile and uncomfortable periods of your financial life when they come up. And it's not an if they come up, it's a when they come up, because you don't get to have a say in when your transmission blows, you know, when you break a leg and need to come up with an uninsured medical cost, or, you know, anything else. If you've already built the toolkit of understanding how money works and how you can utilize it for yourself, you build this confidence, and then those periods don't shake you as much. And then you grow from them. And then you kind of get to the next level, the intermediate and advanced levels of like, now I know I need to do this, this, and this. And I don't have to work as hard to do it because I've already learned my lessons. I've already built the framework. So I think those points are extremely important to consider is you don't just get the benefits of financial and fitness and nutritional development until you've put the time in to learn your lessons and understand the bigger picture and how it works for you and how you can use the system to benefit yourself.
And it's interesting what you just said, Drew, about, you know, if you have a period away from fitness, you've got the skills that when you come back, you know what you need to do. And I think it's the same when we think financially. Once coaches and affiliate owners figure out that they are completely in control of their financial destiny of creating whatever money that they want, need, or aspire to, it's like, okay, things are a bit tight and restrictive now because of things which may or may not be in your control. But when I get back to it, I've got the skills to be able to rebuild that buffer, you know, get me back on the trajectory I want to, even though for whatever reasons things have happened at the moment. But it's getting to that point of realizing that they're actually as in control of their financial freedom as they are of their, you know, physical freedom.
Does it feel like to you guys, you know, the affiliates and coaches that you guys work with, does it feel like there's a semblance of like a constant struggle to put a square peg in a round hole? You know, meaning they have this idea of what a CrossFit gym should look like, and therefore they've kind of preconceived the ideas of what the money around it looks like, and they won't let go of that preconceived idea. Where's the biggest mindset struggle for new clients of you guys?
Lisa's staring at me because she wants me to answer this question. So
no, I was just going to go. Who's going to go?
There's a I guess a meditative line for me this week, which is resurfaced a handful of times, and I think it speaks a little bit to that question. Like the nature of the affiliate model is ever perplexing for all the reasons that we know to be true. But I think the topic that came up this week a lot is to be childlike, and this is a conversation that has happened a few different times with a couple of different clients, and then for whatever reason, the book I was reading, etc. In particular, what I mean by being childlike is to remain that perpetually curious sort of individual, right? To ask a lot of questions rather than to take a position of superiority over people. And so, to your question about like what do people face the most, or like square peg round hole type of conversation, what we have is effectively a landscape of people who, because affiliates have been around for a long time, what I think is actually happening is that there's a collective identity that didn't exist like 15 years ago, right? When we were all trying to become affiliates before like affiliates were kind of a thing, there was a beginner's mindset that was present, right? And in the beginner's mind, there's unlimited possibilities, but in the master's mind, there's only a few, right? And so what I think we see is that exact conversation, and that's the conversation I think that limits them. Meaning, gone are the days of childlike and willful sort of experience and endless opportunities. Now there appears to be a collective identity of what an affiliate is, right? And like that looks like XYZ. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, there are some experts now, or there's at least people who are parading themselves as experts, telling them exactly what an affiliate should look like and be like and act like. And so there's a certain degree of rigidity and mastery that I think exists in the affiliate landscape, that like, this is what an affiliate looks like. Anything else is wrong. And that in and of itself eliminates and eradicates that beginner's mindset, that exploration of creativity. And instead it creates this like laser focus problem of like best practices, which that in and of itself is an issue. But inside that narrative, so now there's this idea that like, okay, this is what it looks like to be a good affiliate. That's new. But alongside that runs, this is what you get in exchange for what that affiliate looks like. And there's not a lot of, beacons of positive examples. There's really just more beacons of like suffering, truly. And it's not an affiliate based problem. This exists in lots of other businesses. It's the very nature of red ocean versus blue ocean businesses. But yeah, there's for sure a limitation that exists in the mindset now of the average affiliate owner, the average coach. And like, there's three, we call them the three species, I suppose, in the ecosystem: the affiliate owner, the professional coach, and the creative, right? And those three people live inside the CrossFit ecosystem. The third one, though, the creative, they don't operate in the same rules. And like, for example, Fit Affiliate would be a creative. Bird Box is a creative, right? Like, these are creative solutions inside the ecosystem that, basically solve problems at a larger scale. And so they still focus on, ideal opportunities, but the coach, the professional coach, and the affiliate owner, they've almost typecast themselves into an impoverished role. They don't want to be there. They want to make money doing this thing because they love this thing. And hopefully creatives and people like us help them understand like the work that you're doing, you already know is saving and changing lives. That's obviously worth way more money than a carton of milk is, but like milk is now more expensive than most of your CrossFit memberships. So like, you're going to have to change that. And one of the things that is fun to talk about is, and you talk about this a lot, is people's beliefs around money, right? And like so I think it's part and parcel of the two things. Like people have this idea now, or this unwillingness to be creative. They just want answers. They want someone to tell them what their affiliate should look like and be like and act like. And in exchange for that, they want to know that like, if I do all these things, are we talking like a $50,000 a year income, a $75,000 a year income? Like, what are we talking? They're like, they want to just be told, right? They just really, that's all what it comes down to. Gone are the days of like,
does
I want to make money.
I guess, does the affiliate and professional coach side of things kind of cap the creative's ability to kind of break through? And also does, how was I thinking to phrase this question? Does the creative type of person are they faced with too much risk in being creative in our space because it's a risky move to be creative? I think if it's unsuccessful, is that like a limiting factor for people in the creative side of things here?
I think anytime, if you look at creatives in any space,
Yeah, I'd agree.
Any creative who hyper niches, I think is assigning or chaining themselves to a potential risk, right? Because you're latching yourself onto things that are likely outside of your control. And so for sure, I think to answer your question directly, being a creative inside the CrossFit space is a huge risk, right? Because you never know what's going to be coming new outside of HQ, and then that could effectively change how your entire business model operates. You don't know what the future of what is the long-term trajectory of what an affiliate looks like, what is what is the long-term implication. But the beauty of what a creative, I think, is inside the space, and I guess creative is always a hard word because people think that means like content creator, although it could.
Sure.
It really just means someone who's a creative problem solver, right? And so you're a creative in terms of what you put together with Wealth Coach, all the professional development things that exist out there are creatives because they come in and they systematically and strategically solve a problem that exists in the ecosystem. And so we haven't really talked that much about that on this podcast. So I guess here we are now, but I think they're the future of CrossFit truly, because they are, right? In terms of we were just talking about, in terms of beacons of potential and success and whatnot, Rogue is a creative, right? They came in and solved the problem, and they are quite literally the most identifiably successful. Hell, they're more successful than the brand is now, right?
Yep.
And so if you can come in and you can solve a problem, you can effectively create a blue ocean inside the ecosystem, which is what most of the creatives have done. There's a lot more opportunity there. And so I think what you'll see is, you take somebody like Dale King, who he's an affiliate owner. He's also a professional coach, but he is no doubt a creative. He took the application and implementation of CrossFit, and he's changed the conventional way people have proceeded or perceived it, rather. Meaning, everybody is well aware of what he's done with the addiction, but he's also created, an entire documentary and all these other things out of it. And so HQ as a brand is starting to shine the light on people like Dale, right? But Dale's not in and of himself, to what we were just talking about, a quote unquote identifiably, specific affiliate owner. He is quite literally a creative inside the affiliate space. And so I think that the creatives become the new opportunity for people to be like, oh, wait, there's other opportunities here than just owning an affiliate or coaching in an affiliate. I can solve problems for people with CrossFit as a tool, because we all know, you can take it and apply it to finance, right? You can take all the principles and processes of the CrossFit methodology, constantly varied functional movements if you want to, but really it's just high intensity, and apply it to even finance. Those lessons carry over into so many areas. And that's, you come in and solve a problem in terms of hey, I want to help you people who are really helping people make more money so that you can help more people. And this is how we're going to do it. We're just going to apply the principles of fitness essentially to the principles of finance. And you'll realize that it's kind of the same game, right? It's just delayed gratification and compound interest. And really the game is the same, right? And so I think the creatives become the new future. Not the new future. I think they become the scions of the brand for CrossFit, to be okay, hey, listen, it's awesome to own an affiliate for all the reasons we know to be true, right? It's awesome to be a coach in an affiliate for all the reasons we know to be true. But there's also an entire other opportunity here to take the methodology and really, truly do great things with it. And I think the health conversation was the first sort of, light they shine in that corner, being outside of the affiliate and what happens in an affiliate, there's still a whole lot of other CrossFit things that are working, and they're over here. So I think to bring it back to your original question, there's still creativity that's present in the creative space, ideally, hopefully, because they're called creatives. So, and I think that will slowly but surely trickles back to the affiliate and the professional coach, and not to turn them all into creatives, but to get them to be maybe if I was just a little bit more creative with this thing, that might solve the problem. Instead of trying to make this thing the same as everybody else's thing, if I make this thing my own thing, there might be more opportunity.
Yeah, I think it seems, just commonplace across everything is there's so much information saturation that people almost don't want to be creative because there's probably a solution out there already. but it's like, good luck navigating that, first of all. But second of all, there's probably a more efficient route to navigate to the solution. And the route is probably just using your creativity to kind of solve the problem in front of you. And I'm not even talking about just an affiliate or that. I'm talking about, anything, whether it's your money, it's your nutrition, it's your fitness, or it's your business. And I think that, a mentor is extremely helpful in a way of like someone who's willing to ask you questions that you won't consider, you haven't considered. And also truly just like letting yourself, like you said, be curious, like looking at things like a kid, like, why is that? And why isn't it this instead? Well, can I try this instead? And you find solutions to it. And that's truly how, I think most of the help that I've provided to my clients on the finance side of things, it almost, there's more aha moments from questions that I ask than investments that I manage for clients. Surely people are happy to see, a good portfolio do better, but more people are happy about connecting the neurological pathways of understanding, and they actually can grasp the picture better, and builds this confidence around their whole financial structure,
Well, it comes down to, the conversation that we're eternally having about the difference between being a coach and being a trainer is the asking versus the telling, the advice model. And, we could sit there and tell clients what to do to a blue in the face, but nobody's necessarily going to do that, because they have that fixed mindset about, well, this is supposed to be hard. I'm supposed to be hustling and grinding, and you gave me the answers that didn't work and all that sort of scenario. So even in that financial space, if you're just telling people, well, just do this, this will make you successful, it's different to them having that. And, we'll say this term 1,000 times is, when you get them to trip over their own truth by answering questions and realizing, it's not the economy, it's not the thing, it's I'm the asshole in the way.
Yeah.
I'm the problem here to limiting my own financial potential. It's outside of whatever else is going on externally.
Truly that. I mean, I think that's not even just finance. I think we're always in our own way, like some of us don't have the career that we want to have because we were in our own way. We don't have the car that we want to have because of that career, and all these things just compound up because we were in our own way. I think I just made a post about that like a couple weeks ago about like, you're in your own way for your money. There's a reason why you don't even understand the value of compound interest, is because you haven't started to play the game. And you start to play the game, making a decision and just taking action is almost always better than trying to find the perfect thing to do before you take action. If you're an astronaut, figure out the perfect thing to do before you take action. There's not a lot of leeway there, but I think if you're running a CrossFit affiliate, or you're trying to kind of get your money in order, just like take action, and it's just do it and get out of your own way, refine your, practices. These are not original ideas. These are just commonplace things that, people that have screwed up and become successful have figured out. And it's always action. It's never, thought. Obviously think about it, but
it's
analysis by paralysis.
The perfect solution for somebody else is not necessarily going to be your perfect solution. I can give you a template, not that we would, for here's how you run a type, an A-level affiliate. You could plug that into your model, and it's absolutely not going to work. It's going to go balls up, and you're just going to be disappointed because it doesn't suit, your particular framework and who you are, your values. So it really does need to be, you're right. It's, somebody wants to lose weight and they go looking for the perfect training program. It's like, just go for a walk, just do something today and then do a little more of it tomorrow, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah, I think money is fast. For us, at least, money, we don't talk much about like the practical methods, I guess we would say. That's kind of more Drew's perspective. Like we use money here a lot to diagnose and really address behavior, right? Like, it's just like, why do you hold the beliefs that you hold around money? And I guess the point is that like all humans effectively will face the exact same barriers. They just face them at different points, right? And like sometimes that's, that can be money, that can be success, that can be anxiety, that can be love, that can be, you name it, fear. And we all face them at different points. Some of us, we grew up poor, and so we face money problems early on. Some people end up, with no money problems in their childhood, so they have no concept of that until much later on, and they got to figure out how to keep it. And I guess my point in bringing that part of it up is that you are always the asshole, right? No matter what it is. Just at some point, you're going to become the asshole, right? Meaning you're going to have to address or face the problems or the limitations that's preventing you from getting into that next barrier. And I think, generally speaking, money usually becomes a big part of that conversation around the same time for most of us. Even if you were born wealthy, or you were born with nothing, like at some point, probably in your 20s, you have to reconcile, like, what's the future, right? And so conventionally speaking, there's been, for much of the last 50 years, 40 years, there's been a conventional path, right? You go to school, you get yourself a good job, and you make some money, and you put some money away, and then you get into conventional investment vehicles, IRAs, 401ks, et cetera. And then that performs pretty well, and you get yourself a nice picket fence and a nice house, and then you can use and borrow and leverage some of that equity, and that kind of drives the American dream. And then one day when you're old enough and you've saved enough, you can retire, assuming, of course, the things that we now know to be true, like inflation, et cetera, don't completely eradicate and change that whole thing. That was the conventional strategy. And now, I guess, to bring it back to the barrier thing, the barriers are completely shifted because we have more access than ever to information, both good and bad. And so, to what Drew said earlier, there's never been a better time now than there is now to make money. Like, you can make money by literally doing pretty much anything. And people are trying to do that. So the conventional paths, I think, are very different, which forces people to actually have behavioral conversations about money that they never had to have before. Like, if you followed that, we'll call it that government strategy that existed, which was like, hey, go get a job, you take care of your family, get yourself a 401k, and you get a pension for being a good guy. You get a watch and some money on the back end. Like, you don't really have to confront beliefs about money. You might have to confront some beliefs about budgets, and like, I got to reconcile, like, okay, I can't have that kind of house or that kind of car, but I'm okay with it because I got this kind of thing. That might have been it. But now the doors are blown way off. People want to take unconventional paths all the time without really considering or assessing, like, the risks. Like, everybody and their brother right now is convinced or, interested in side hustles, right? You can't go on YouTube without there being some front running strategy or this or that, and everybody is watching it, right? And I think maybe the pandemic blew that wide open because people were like, I don't want to go back to my job that I hated. But people have now figured out lots of different ways to make a lot of different money. But what they don't really understand is the risks that come along with that, right? Like the sleepless nights, the uncertainty, all those things that, like, you really got in exchange for, like, get the job, save the money, invest the money. And you know what? You don't have to think about it. So what you guys are investing in or asking for is, like, you can make money doing anything you want, but be prepared because the awareness comes along with it. And what you're going to run into is, like, your beliefs around money, especially when it comes time to ask other people for money. And this is a big issue that we see a lot inside the CrossFit space, is that, like, I know what I'm doing CrossFit. I know that it works because I love CrossFit. It changed my life. I'm going to change other people's lives with CrossFit. No one really ever said the question that matters the most: how are you going to sell this thing? Which is, like, how are you going to ask people for money for this thing? And they're like, I'm not gonna. I'm just going to build it, and they're going to come and throw money at me. And in a perfect world, that would happen. And let's assume that it did go really well. Let's assume that did happen. You're still going to have to confront beliefs, because all of a sudden you're going to have so much money. You're going to be like, I'm a bad person because I grew up thinking that money man bad, right? Like, then we got to deal with that problem, right? Or vice versa, which is the real reality, which is they don't show up. And if they do show up, they don't want to throw any money at you. They're like, hey, you mind if I just extend my free trial for forever? Right? Like, and they're like, the gym owner's like, yeah, I have worth issues, so I'm okay with you doing that in the corner for free. So I don't have to say, no, sir, please give me money, right? So you're going to have to confront those issues. Like, nope, you're going to have to ask them for money, probably more money than you're willing to pay for this service yourself, because you don't need to pay for this service because you've already figured out how to do it. So you have to charge someone. Guess what? We're talking about money. And so I guess my point is that you can make more money now than ever, but the exchange of that is what people aren't really ready for. And you see this just exploding brains all over the place, are just like, especially in the CrossFit space, which is like, yeah, you can make a lot of money doing this, but you're going to have to reconcile your beliefs around money.
Yeah, I think here's an interesting thought on that is are we conditioned that, I'm not going to say why, but I'm going to ask the question, are we conditioned to be really, really apprehensive about selling a service or a product? Because until the advent of the internet, which created the potential for you to make money however you wanted to directly to consumer. Prior to that, I feel like we were corporate America. You were a worker that created a product or a service, but the company is the one that made the sales. So you had a middleman between you and the product or service you were essentially helping to sell. And then the company asked for the consumer's money, then the company paid you. So there's a disconnect between asking for that consumer dollar. And when you think, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I'm going to do this on my own, I don't need a company, I don't need the man to hold me down. But it turns out, correct, you didn't need the man holding you down, but what you did need is you needed that middleman because you're too scared to ask for your own worth from another person. And how prevalent is asking another person for money in the entrepreneur space? I mean, that's the only way you're making money in the entrepreneur space, in the self-employed space. If you don't want to call a CrossFit affiliate an entrepreneur, they're certainly self-employed. They're on their own. They're out there with no mom or dad holding their hand. There's no someone else asking for business.
And I think when people ask someone for money, like you're trying to sell a membership or whatever, and someone says no, then in this space, we tend to look at it as a reflection of they're saying no to me, not saying no to my offer, my product. They didn't need my widget or or their own reasons. We completely take that on as like, it's about me and they said no to me and I'm not worth anything. So we make it about us, not about the thing that we have to offer or the thing that they need. And we internalize that to a degree and go, oh, well, no one needs what I have, or this isn't worth anything, or I'm not worth anything. And we deflect all those internal things onto the thing that we're doing, when really it could just be a simple transactional thing like, I don't need that widget right now.
Yep.
But then we internalize it's about me and my worth and my value. Then it makes it impossible then to ask the next time. And that's when we start to give stuff away.
Yeah, I think anyone that's been in sales, I think, Tony, you spend a good amount of time in sales. Anyone that's been in sales, like if you're getting anything but a no 90% of the time, like you just haven't heard enough no's, because there's so much more prevalence in the no department than there is in the yes department.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good part of the conversation too, right? Like, whatever the statistic is now, it depends on where you get the information, but I think that self-employment or self-reported employment increases by about 7% per year. And I think, like, depending on the demographic, 20 to 30 or 30 plus, like it makes up like 20% of the employment of people are self-employed now. And that's growing. So if that's growing by 7%, the projections are all very clear. Like, more people will be self-employed in the very, very, very near future than employed by a company. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? One, the internet makes it possible, way faster, way easier. There's a wealth of information. There's an ability to sell and market and put yourself out there. And so I think that reason it grows, but there's also just this glorification, right? Which is, we'll call it the influencer culture or whatever, just like, you should be your own boss, like go do your own thing. Like, nobody's really preparing people for the fallout of that, because it's a whole skill set that I think truly you almost have to be born a sociopath, right? With some degree of sociopathic tendencies to really excel in the entrepreneurial space. And like, I'm not calling all entrepreneurs a sociopath because I am one, but like, there's certainly an ability to disconnect emotionally from outcomes and situations that most people don't have, right? And they're not going to learn those skills. And I'm not here to tell you that your future is going to be dismal, but as somebody who helps people step into opportunity and ideas and creators in futures, right? Like, I watch it all the time, them cower, right? Be like, I don't want to have to deal with that uncertainty. Well, you're going to have to go back to employment, right? Because like, there's an exchange that happens there. And so for decades, that was the exchange, right? Which is like, hey, I will agree to give you your 4 square if you agree to give me your 40 years. And in exchange, you don't have to think. You just come to work and do it really well. And I'll take care of your future and your trajectory and make sure this thing is here for the next 40 years. So you get a pension and we're going to be there, but that was built on the generation of we, which is like the pre-boomer generation, and the boomers, love them to death. Like, they eradicated the generation of we, and they made it about the generation of me. And they really hyper individualized the entire corporate thing, which left the generation of Z being like, hey, I want to get back to we, but can I still be me? And so you have this sort of like, nobody's preparing, because we're still using 50-year-old education and 50-year-old systems and processes to try to teach kids how to work and operate in an ecosystem. And then we got an entire government of people who don't know anything about the modern economy. So people just aren't prepared for the fallout that comes from like the conversation you just had, Drew, which is sales, right? Like, yeah, dude, you can absolutely be your own boss if you're willing to ask a stranger for money. A lot more money than you're probably willing to pay yourself. And you're probably not gonna. You're probably not going to be okay with that part because you have preconceived notions of sales and insecurity and inferiority, and that brings and bubbles a lot of things to the surface. So maybe we got to deal with those first, because like if you believe in your product and you know what it does works, why on earth aren't you willing to ask them what you know you need to ask them for in terms of money? And the answer is you. Right. Mm-hmm. It's you who has a breakdown in the perception of it. It's not about a new sales tactic. It's not about the new sales script. It's going to have to be you reconciling that, like, oh, behaviorally and psychologically, I'm missing a piece of validation and worth that allows me to ask people for the money that is needed to be there. It's not because, salespeople are, sleazy or willing to ask for more money. I suppose they might be if the thing that they're selling
is a potential too. There's bad people in every department.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think what you see now is that we have this lost generation. Like the kids today won't need to really go to work. Maybe in 20 years there's no point in going and getting a job at Alphabet or Meta, because you could just maintain a stable of working at all of them on a contract and working remote and doing the thing. And like no modern system is in place that's like, look at what's happening with office buildings. We don't know what to do with remote workers. We're like, can you guys come back, please? Why? Mostly because and we don't know what to do with it unless you come back to work. So can you please come back to work? Because we don't know how to work from home because I don't like my husband or my wife. So I want to go back in the office, but no one else is here. So can you guys come back in? Like it's a very interesting thing that I think money is always fascinating me for that reason. Not necessarily the wealth side of it, but the behavioral side of it. But you can't really get to the wealth side of it without addressing the behavioral side of it.
I think it's a little bit less transparent, obviously, from my perspective and from yours, but maybe from others it's not. But it seems to be a little bit less obvious what one's worth is when you're self-employed, when you're an entrepreneur, because you have to figure that out versus in the corporate space or working for the government.
They tell you what you're worth.
You're going to apply for a job and you're going to interview, and then they're going to tell you, hey, we're offering you this salary with these benefits and you work this much. Do the math, and now you have what you're worth per day or per hour. And in the entrepreneur space, February might not be the same as March or April or May. It might be better, it might be worse. But if you don't understand that your value changes as your skill set changes, then you're going to be left in the dust with, the rest of them, the rest of the people who weren't prepared for all of the facets of being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, and having to sell.
And I think people in the entrepreneur space sometimes fall in the trap of like, the market will dictate what the product's worth. Like you keep charging until somebody says no and go, okay, well, that's the market saying that's its value. When that's really kind of that backwards way of doing it. Because if you let the market decide, the market's going to, of course, have it for the lowest possible value, because that's what markets do. It's like, okay, well, we need to get this for the lowest, rather than, no, this is what it's worth and this is what I'm charging for it. And this is, the value it provides. Like how much we talk about affiliate owners, we talk to them often about like what you are doing is saving someone's life. Like literally, what is that worth to them in the long game? Like what is that worth? Oh, you can't put a dollar figure on that. Well, you can. Like no one's going to pay that actual dollar figure, but what is something that is that valuable? Like that's
it's not a free permanent drop-in. That's surely not the value,
Well, no, it's
no free trial is going to convey it. That's for sure.
It's also hard. How do you navigate? And I guess maybe how some of your clients navigated the realization that not everybody that walks into your gym can afford your expertise. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a level 1 coach who can say 3, 2, 1, go, 3, 2, 1, rest. We're talking about, like you said, someone who has the potential to affect the whole direction of your life. get you off the couch and get you on top of a mountain, truly. But like understanding that everyone that walks through your door is kicking the tires, but they don't necessarily they haven't maybe hit the point where they're ready to break and give you what you're, worth, or, just like all of us do. How many times did you walk into a store with one of your parents when you were a kid and your parents didn't buy anything? They were just looking around, people looking through, and let them go. But I think if you've understood what your value is, or generally where your value is at, like not swaying on that is very hard to do, because I think there's also a built-in philanthropic side of CrossFit where we feel like we're these saviors, and there's I should do this for the good of the community, right? But the good of the community is only as good as your personal well-being, and your personal well-being has a direct correlation with your money situation. If you can't pay your bills, how are you going to go save Becky's life at the gym? You're going to be there, and you're not going to be thinking about Becky. You're going to be thinking about your bills.
And it's that you've got someone sitting in front of you that, is not a good fit, or is not, clearly the right person for you. But we get trapped in that scarcity mindset as like, I need them. Like I need their $50 a week, or their, $200 a month, or whatever it is. Like I need them. I need them all.
You can only serve so many people.
Yeah. I think, from an efficiency perspective, or from an energy perspective, thinking is very costly, right? There's a reason why 80 to 90% of your daily decisions go unconscious or subconscious, right? And the reason I bring that up is that the return on investment for employment for most people was the ability to conserve that 200 to 300 calories per day, truly, from a biological standpoint of not having to think. Because, bring it back to that point, the uncertainty requires an excessive amount of thought and obsession that most people aren't prepared to do. And you see this kind of come to a head when it does come time to, they saw, okay, there's this opportunity now to own this thing called a CrossFit affiliate, which looks pretty simple on paper, right? Like, I'm going to do the thing that I love to do as my full-time thing, and I'm going to create an environment for people to do that thing here, and they will pay me money. And that seems like almost like an employment type opportunity inside an entrepreneurial landscape, because their path is so clear. It's almost like buying a franchise, to use that word, but not quite. So it's still entrepreneurial because there's no operating system. And so it seemed like it was similar enough or simple enough until they get into it and they realize it's much more difficult, because the thing that they have to confront is themselves in it, which is like, I've got a lot to think about. I don't really want to have to think about it. One of the things I have to think about is, how am I showing up as a person, as an individual, in identity, in psychology and behaviorally in every single situation? How is me doing that? And most of them don't want to do that. They want to look at like, what can they change outside, right? Like, how can I change the job? How can I change what I do? They don't really think about how they interact with those things. And so to bring it to the point of how do they ask people for money for this thing? The first thing they have to consider is that they got to know, they have to figure out what it is that they're selling, right? And like, that requires two different conversations. One, what product do you want to put out into space, and what product do you believe in? Because for most people, they want to sell coaching, which is worth a ton of money, and they can only help a handful of people through coaching. But the very product that they provide is training, because that's their experience with CrossFit, right? Like, they came in, they weren't really coached, they were trained, they learned CrossFit, they were taught CrossFit, and they were basically prescribed CrossFit to change their life, and it worked, and it works every single time. That's training, right? But you can also take CrossFit and use it as a basically, we'll call it a behavioral exploration tool, right? Like, because it's through that physical intensity, it's through those arduous tasks, it's through that challenge, through those new skill developments that you can learn a lot about, like, hey, Drew, why is this a challenge for you? Right? And you can have deep, meaningful conversations. That piece is worth a lot of money. The training piece isn't worth that much money. And somewhere in the middle, they tried to sell, coaching, sell a Ferrari, and then they delivered a training, which is a Civic. And if I bought a Ferrari and you showed up and gave me a Honda, I'm going to be very upset, but people don't realize that, even the people who are buying it. And so to your point about tire kickers and window shoppers, it's not that people actually want to shop around and can't afford or can afford CrossFit is that they don't really know what it is, right? They don't really know what it can be, because most people can tell you what the definition of CrossFit is, but very few people can tell you the application, the implementation. And that includes the consumer, but also the producer and the provider, right? And so if people don't understand how to apply this or implement it, they can't possibly understand the value or purveyance. So like if I don't know what this is going to do to change your life and what the outcome is going to be, the only thing I know is what I'm going to have to do for you, which is going to be the training part of it. And that's a hard part of it. And so they have to figure out, where they want to be in that conversation. But the big reason most people don't want to go into the coaching thing is that, one, it's very hard to do. It requires a certain degree of individual vulnerability in you as a coach to be willing to get other people to be vulnerable back. And so for most people, they don't want to do that. They're like, whoa, that's too uncomfortable. I'm going to stay over here. Well, that's okay, but don't charge people coaching prices and try to give them training, right? Like, let's just split it down the middle and talk about the difference. And I think that's where a lot of it comes down to. But most of that centers way back in the beginning, which is like, yeah, anybody can own a business, anyone, but you're probably not going to want to, because there's a whole lot of you that shows up in that business that you're not going to want to have to deal with.
I think ironic to this conversation is, as perplexed as affiliate owners might be about like, why can't I get more people in my door? Why can't, people just understand that I'm worth what I'm telling you I cost? Ironically, those same people that don't understand those things that could use a coach, I guess in this case, it's easy to say Fitfiliate fits that role pretty well. It's like, I don't want to pay Fitfiliate. I can figure it out. I'm sure you can grind it out, but you're telling someone else they need a coach while at the same time saying, I don't need a coach. But, you're in your own way. Again, that same mantra. And I've experienced it with myself too. In my business, I charge a specific fee for, when I manage individuals' accounts, and my value can oftentimes be directly equated to the prospect in front of me of like, you're going to get paid this and you're going to manage my account. And the coaching part is very translucent. It's there, but it's not like obvious. And the questions that I ask my best clients that are willing to be, like you said, vulnerable and basically say like, I think I know, but I know I don't know it all. What am I not seeing? The value in hiring the coach to just expand your perspective and remove those blinders, will pay back in dividends, probably in compounding growth for where you can go. But it's ironic, I think, that the same individuals that are perplexed about the people that they're trying to sell to, they can't see it in their mirror that you need to do the same thing. You need to constantly be finding someone who's willing to help you and make you ask those questions that are so uncomfortable to ask,
Big part of that too comes from like when someone does in that situation be like, you know what, I sell coaching, I need to get myself a coach. They go and accidentally get themselves a trainer, which is meaning they get someone who's going to teach them and tell them what to do instead of ask them questions. And then that fits the narrative of what they think coaching is, which is, no, as a coach, I teach people and tell people what to do. I'm like, that's training. Trainers teach, coaches listen. Like, there's a big difference. And they're like, how would I ever possibly help people get fitter if I didn't teach them what to do? I'm like, well, you can actually teach people a whole lot through the right questions, much more than you can probably teach them by telling them, because you actually can't really change someone's mind. You can only really help them arrive at awareness. And like, coaching is the most effective medium at doing that. So I think that's another sort of layer to the problem, which is like, even if they do decide like, hey, I sell coaching, I should get a coach, you might want to ask yourself if you know what in fact coaching is. Because like, making it Fitfiliate versus the world, like, there's a reason why we're the only people in this industry that do what we do. And that's because it's hard, right? It's actually, it's almost like it's an impossibly difficult business model, but it's that way by design, right? If we showed up and we took a position of superiority and we thought that our job was to teach you what to do, that would prevent us from, bringing back to this beginning conversation, from having that childlike curiosity and just learning you, right? Getting to understand you and then helping you explore many opportunities. But if we came in with mastery and we said, hey, here's what to do, we're going to completely eliminate your mastery or your opportunities, and we're going to get you to believe that there's only a couple of ways that this can actually work, and that's just not true. And so, and I think that the beauty of really kind of what you do with Wealth Coach and the perspective you have with them is that, like, much of your industry is essentially centered around a handful of conventional investment products, right? Like, most of everybody in your industry is like, they're hyper focused on one. That some people love IRAs, some people like 401ks, but like what you do is very different in terms of, like, yeah, you still have and deploy those things much more actively, because I think most people sell them passively, but through the work that you're doing and the messaging that's coming out of Wealth Coach is the same thing. It's like, hey, if I just showed up like every other asshat in my industry and said, here's where you need to put your money and this is what it's going to get you, I'm going to take a position of superiority, which is going to eliminate both of our abilities to get to know each other. And it's going to eliminate your creativity. But instead, what happens is that you show up and say, why is this a struggle for you? And where do we want to get to? Okay, great. That looks like an amazing goal. Perfect. Tell me what you're doing. Oh, well, guess what? I don't know if I need to tell you this, Drew, but you're not going to get there doing those things, right? Like, and that is it's such an infinitely available thing to so many people in the industry. But much like in the fitness world, even in the financial world, they think that their job is to stand on a podium and tell them what to do and show how important I am and show how much experience I have and show how much knowledge I have. Yeah, it just makes you a financial trainer, right? You're a financial teacher, not an advisor, not a coach.
It's true.
There's just not there's like a dearth of coaches in the fitness space, which is what makes Wealth Coach such a fascinating thing, because it solves a huge problem. It's the same thing that you see in the gap between therapy and action, right? Like, everybody needs therapy because we need to learn about ourselves, but there's still a big lack in terms of therapy's ability to get you to take daily action to now that I know those things about myself, what do I do? Now you know why you make those decisions, right? But like, how do I fix it? Well, you just know now why you make those decisions. Like, that there's a gap in there, and that gap is the coach. Like, the coach is the person who deals in action, and they don't deal in action because they teach people anything. They deal in action because they take a direct look at what are you not doing, and that becomes a big part of the thing. And like, so when it comes time to get a coach, they need to look for coaches, not trainers. For the same reason, when it comes time, like, I think most people shy away from the conversation. They're like, oh, I've pursued that route. They made me feel stupid. Like, I felt dumb. I felt like I was poor because I couldn't hit the investment strategy that they gave me, and I didn't have this or I didn't have that. And like, most people walk out of a financial advisor meeting being like, geez, I got a lot of work to do. And I think that's how most people walk out of an average gym being like, geez,
definitely.
Yeah, I got a lot of work.
What is scarier than having to look at your own beliefs in the eyes? I mean, honestly, like, I'd say I think it's kind of driven by data, is like in your 30s for the adult male, that's typically when people have a midlife crisis. And it's not just buying a Porsche because you've been waiting your whole life for it, but it's like you start to be very introspective.
Definitely buy the Porsche.
Definitely buy the Porsche. That's financial advice from Tony.
Yeah.
But my point is,
Drew and I differ.
Vulnerability is one of the scariest things out there. But at the same time, like, it's so necessary to move past those barriers that, whether you want to believe it or not, you've installed yourself. And it's too bad. But, I think that people want the CrossFit space. They want the finance space. They want nutrition to just be a science, just raw science. But I think the reality is there's a hybrid mixture between science and art to coaching, science and art to financial advice. There's a science and there's an art to nutritional coaching. We all know nutritional coaches, and some of them are just like, eat this, check in with me next week. And then there's some that are like, why are you doing that? Why do you do it that way? Right. So like, every single space that you can find a coach in, it's not just science. It can't be just science. There's not a template to just plug and play. It's not a Honda Civic. It's more of a Ferrari, right? So you got to kind of fine tune it. You got to get specific custom detailing done and custom mechanic to handle your specific, issues with your specific mileage. And that's okay. And there's not everyone's going to want to pay for that service, at least yet. They got to hit a certain point where it hurts. And when you find those people that hurt, you're going to have no problem relaying to them what your value is and how much that value costs.
Yeah. A big part of that, I think, comes, and it's important to highlight, like, I use it derogatorily when we say, you know, sell a Ferrari, deliver a Honda. And it's not that a Ferrari is better or different than Honda, because in every conceivable sense, the Honda is actually probably way better than the Ferrari. It's just that, you know, the reason that we make that example is that it's not trainers versus coaches, or that trainers are worse than coaches. They're just different. They're different in their application. And that the most important thing that I think is worth highlighting is that the reason why trainers are different is that they work in volume. More people need training than people want coaching. Like, and so everybody needs a trainer. Everybody needs to be taught, because everybody needs information. And so if you want to be a trainer and you love that stuff, like, that is absolutely the best place for you to be. You don't necessarily need to automatically ascend from trainer to coach. Every coach is, generally speaking, a trainer as well, because they usually level up to that point. But, you know, I think we come across a lot sometimes as like trainer versus coach, or one versus the other is better. It's just that they're completely different for the conversation you just said, which is vulnerability. Right? Like, coaching requires a very different, not only approach, but also requires a completely different customer. Like, you know, we'll talk about Fitfiliate's big failure, which is we popped up being like, we're going to help people achieve freedom. And, you know, thought that like that would make the most sense. But the thing that we never really considered was that most people don't want freedom, because with freedom comes the necessity to confront your own personality, your own behavior. And like, that's, most people were like, I would much rather live in a job, live in an opportunity, be told what to do and exactly what to do, so I don't have to think. That's why we had to really understand that, like, hey, we're only really here for probably about 15% of the affiliates. And that's because most of them don't really want to pull back the layer, because they don't really want to build something individual. They don't really want to build freedom. They just want to be a part of something. And that's okay, right? That makes them the red ocean. That makes them a line and an extension of the other affiliates. But to your point, no, there's not much out there that's as uncomfortable as, you know, looking in the mirror. And I think for most people, if you've had enough conversations with people, you know that they don't do it. And that's why, like, you know, I treasure our friendship, because you and I have many uncomfortable, but also very vulnerable conversations, which is very rare, right? To find a friend in space and in time to be able to do that requires a couple of things. One, you know, you've had your own personal growth to get to that point. And two, the other person has obviously had to, but it really all centers around the development of freedom of relationship. Like, I couldn't be the friend to you that I think that I am if I didn't have the freedom of relationship that I do. Like, I know that if Drew calls me, like, and I need to be there, I would just be there. And like, that's not to say that I'm better than anybody else. It's just that, like, I had to work a lot to build those freedoms to be able to show up in the handful of relationships that I choose to keep. Right. And like, and I think for most people, they just are like, they see the outcome, but they don't see the input. And like, that input, to your point, just like, that's the uncomfortable part, which is like, hey, I wanted to help people see freedom for what it actually is, what the intention and the application of freedom is. Not just like, everybody thinks freedom is like retirement, Mai Tais, beaches, right? Yeah. It's not that. It's not, freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It's the intentionality of responsibility. And unfortunately for us, I thought, you know, in the beginning, I was like, everybody wants this thing. And then we started screening people, and I was like, you're not ready for this thing. Yeah. You're not either. Neither are you. Oh, and so like, it was like 1 out of every like 5 people was like, oh yeah, you're our Huckleberry. But there's a power that comes, you know, back to the point of what you sell. There's a power that comes from knowing who's not for you, much more than comes from knowing who is for you.
Sure. And I think kind of like my last point on that too is just that, like, you know, vulnerability is never confronted in public. It doesn't happen in public. So we're like, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about the fact that, like, the shit that you just said gave me feelings, but those feelings are mine. They have nothing to do with you. Those are all mine. So why are we not more willing to, you know, just put some things in public? You know, I think one of the best things that I've seen in social media is when you run across people, influencers, entrepreneurs, whatever, that they're willing to build something and try something in public. That's amazing, because you hold yourself accountable, but you also make it pretty apparent that you fucked up here and you succeeded here, and you're just refining the process. And that vulnerability becomes something that you cherish. And as soon as you start to not feel vulnerable anymore, you start to become very aware that you need to step up a little bit more to find that level of discomfort where you're like, I'm not comfortable here, but that's where I need to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's probably a powerful note to wrap it up.
How did we end here? This ain't the financial. Got Drew back on here. We're supposed to be talking about investment vehicles. We talking about
This is what we do. We bait and switch. We got everybody in on how to make more money, and the sky is falling to let's be vulnerable and let's talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
So
Well, it turns out I don't think you can have one without the others. So maybe we're all unique in that regard, and that's why we get along so well. But I think it's inevitable. Everybody wants to get to the next level, but you're going to have to conquer yourself in that first one.
100%.
Spoiler alert. All right. Thank you for your time, Drew. We'll
Thanks
pop the links if people want to connect with you at Wealth Coached in the show notes. But if you're looking for a financial coach, and you're US based, then Drew is your man for sure. But has a heap of useful content and just things that are going to make you think a little bit deeper. So as always, we will have you back on again sooner rather than later.
Maybe we'll actually talk about investment vehicles then.
Let's talk about money.
Yeah, let's talk about the money, but I feel like it's just going to head down the same path again.
Probably.
But it's always a good chat. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Drew. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please remember to like and subscribe on your favorite platform. And if you know an affiliate owner, a coach, or entrepreneur that would benefit from hearing our conversations, please share this with them. We love the feedback and support we have from you guys, our audience. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find all the useful links in the show notes. We would love to connect with you. Keep doing the great work.